I'm just going to start off by saying that I am a fan of Xperia. It's probably my favourite brand right now simply because of what it allows me to do for creating YouTube videos and content in general. And I think a lot of people that still like the brand that aren't those kind of users like it because it still offers the hardware and features that a lot of other smartphones have taken out over the years. They're by no means perfect and they are not for everyone. But the Mark IV series, which is what we are recording this video on right now with the Rode Wireless Go plugged into the headphone jack, is definitely the best yet, but there are some caveats. So as the title alluded to, I have indeed been using this phone for actually just over a week now, and so far I am impressed. And I actually had the One Mark IV back in September, had that for around a month. And I really, really loved that phone. You might be wondering, well, why did you get rid of that phone if you really loved it? Well, I decided to try the Pixel 7 Pro, and as noted by one of my previous videos, that didn't work out. But anyway, the 5 series though is the series that I've used the most. I've actually had the 5 Mark II, I had the 5 III as well for a month. The Mark IV offers a very nice upgrade over those models. There's now a matte finish on the back, we have wireless charging, we've got a massive 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and we have big upgrades on the front-facing camera. And yeah, I genuinely still have no idea how they've managed to fit a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in a phone that feels this small. For the first time though, we have a differentiator with the One Mark IV. Usually both phones have the same camera system. This year, Sony decided to go a different route. The One Mark IV has an actual power zoom lens, and the 5 Mark IV does not have this. It has a fixed 2.5x zoom lens. Compared to a lot of the folding periscope zoom lenses out there, is not very much. But of course, they had space constraints with this phone. It is a very compact phone. It's packing in so much. So they had to make some sort of compromise, and I'm actually kind of happy that they did. I did find I think it started at 3.5x on the Xperia 1 Mark IV. And sometimes for the kind of shots that I'm doing, and I like to do a lot of sort of portrait photography, I take loads of photos of the dogs. 3.5x was a little bit too much. 2.5x is absolutely spot on, and I do think the clarity is a little bit better. So I'm quite happy for that change, but I do understand that a lot of people will see that as a downgrade over what was the variable zoom lens that we had in last year's 5 Mark III. So performance and battery life on this phone are very, very good, solid. Sony did draw a lot of criticism when the 1 Mark IV launched in particular. A lot of people were reporting overheating issues. I did find that the SoC was a little bit toasty. The 8 Gen 1 is a toasty chip, especially if it's not managed properly with the thermals, if you've not got proper cooling. The Xperias don't have much in the way of that. But Sony have updated the phones quite a lot, and updates were pretty rapid at the time. And they've made some changes to default settings to make sure that people are not using features that they don't need to use that cause the overheating to happen quicker. So we have the seamless zoom feature on the Xperia Mark IV series this year, and what this does is it activates all 3 of the rear lenses at the same time, so that you can easily just switch between them as you're zooming through. That's why it's seamless. But there's a cost to that. That means that the SoC is powering all 3 lenses, sensors at the same time, and obviously that is very, very taxing on the SoC. So a lot of people were complaining that we were getting 4K 60 recording for only 5 minutes and the phone would overheat and turn features off, that sort of thing. So people were complaining that when they were recording 4K 60 video, for instance, they could only record around 5 minutes, which sure isn't fantastic depending on what you're doing. But I found that if you turned off the seamless zoom, which when I got the 1 Mark IV, that was on by default. With the 5 Mark IV, it's turned off. I found that I roughly got around 5 minutes or so myself with 4K 60 using seamless zoom. When I turned it off and went to just using the main lens, I recorded 17 minutes. And this was actually just at the end of our summer where we were still in a heat wave, I think we were around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. It was toasty, and the phone managed to do 17 minutes of 4K 60. I was perfectly fine with that. That was fine. Not a problem. Sony did really improve things over time. I've not had an issue so far with the 5 Mark IV, but then again, it's winter. It's pretty cold, so I would expect it to perform a lot better right now. So thermal management is much better now, but if you're playing games and if you put them on the highest settings, you're going to have a similar story. You're going to get throttle in and issues with high temperatures. Fortunately though, Xperia's Game Enhancer gives you all of the options to change the responsiveness of the screen, the refresh rate, so you can manage the thermals a lot better than you can on some phones. I mean, I do love whacking the settings up altogether on Pokemon Go, I'm not going to lie. It's like the best Pokemon Go experience ever. And it's so easy to play one-handed because of the narrow screen. I did actually find that it played nicer than the Galaxy Fold 4 played it, even with an 8 Plus Gen 1 in there. I also did a stream the other day. This was on Sunday. We do a weekly mobile game stream here on Grounded Tech. And we were playing League of Legends Wild Rift. This is obviously on an 8 Gen 1. It's deemed to be very toasty, power hungry, that sort of thing. Played for about 90 minutes, an hour and a half. The phone was plugged into another cable. It was outputting video to a monitor through a capture card. The phone only lost 29% battery in that time, which I was very, very impressed with. 29%. However, my friend, he was using the Oppo Find X5 Pro, and he lost quite a bit more. I can't remember the number exactly, but he lost quite a significant amount. It was much closer to 50%. So I was very, very happy with that. And I was streaming the week before using the Galaxy Fold 4, and I had all sorts of issues with it disconnecting and reconnecting to the display, and it was an absolute nightmare. Absolutely no issues whatsoever with the Xperia. If you're a game streamer, you'll absolutely love that. I have to say build quality as well is excellent. Like, it's so much more solid than previous 5 Series phones, which feel very sort of light and hollow. I mean, it's still fairly lightweight, but the phone feels more substantial. There's some sort of, it feels more dense. And I think that's partly because they've pushed in a bigger battery, and they really are using up a lot of that space. We've got improved haptics, which feel even better than on the 1 Mark IV for some reason. Don't know why. Fingerprint reader is still the best implementation of any fingerprint reader going, in my opinion. I love the placement. I love having it in the power button. It's fantastic. The phone's awake before it gets out of my pocket, and that's exactly how I want it to be. I'm also enjoying being back on a Xperia camera system. I know it's not for everybody, and I know the lack of computational photography for a lot of people is a deal breaker. It's not for me, because I like the natural looking shots that it produces. And I haven't done too much with this phone yet, but as you can see, it's perfectly capable. You do get some really nice looking shots out of it. And I'm hoping to get a lot more photography and videography stuff done in the very near future, because I'll also have this phone for my wedding in March, so we'll see how. So we'll see what we get from that as well. Obviously, we've got a photographer, so I should probably let the photographer do the majority of the photo taking. Always great having that physical shutter button as well. I loved it from the Windows Phone days with the Nokia Lumias, and I love it so much. I love it. So I wish every phone had it, but for a phone like this, it makes perfect sense. I will say though that obviously we've still got the same main sensors as last year and the year before, so Sony really need to upgrade the sensors this year on the Mark V series. I actually think we're going to get some pretty beefy upgrades on that front, but for a lot of people, I think you'd be perfectly fine with what you can get out of an Xperia right now. One thing just to mention with the screen, I don't know what it is with the screens this year in Xperias, but they feel different to the last couple of years, especially on the 5 series. They used to be so responsive and fluid, and I don't feel that with the latest Xperias, with the Mark IV series. It feels very, very different. I can't really put my finger on it. Sorry, no pun intended there. Finger on it. Good one. I can't quite work out what it is. I need to actually look at the the specs and maybe look at the display tech and things a little bit more to work out why that feels so much different. It's still perfectly fine. It's still very responsive, but it doesn't feel as good to me as previous models. Of course, we've already mentioned the headphone jack because I'm using it right now, and it's really, really useful to use with a set of IEMs like my periodic audio berylliums. And then with the Rode Wireless Go, for instance, if you're doing some recording, this is plugged into the headphone jack. Technically, I could plug in a charger as well if I wanted to because the USB-C port's free. So, you know, you've got options. And of course, we have a micro SD card slot, which means you can offload all that footage that you're recording very, very easily, or photos. If you've got lots of raw files, you can offload them to your computer very easily. It's nice to have that option, and I think it's something that is very pro-consumer, and another reason why I say that a lot of people still like Xperia. Sure, they don't sell loads, but the people that do like them for a reason. And micro SD card slots and headphone jacks, things like that, go a long way for those people. There's not much in the way of negatives, but the main negatives for me right now, which isn't really something that was in Sony's control per se, but there's not much in the way of third-party accessories, in regards especially to screen protectors and cases. The only well-known case that I could get was from Spigen with their Rugged Armor series. A great case, a case that I really, really like, and actually a case that I had on my One Mark IV as well. But I just wish there was more options there. And then when it comes to screen protectors, glass screen protectors, Spigen don't even do one for the 5 Mark IV. They did one for the 1 Mark IV, and it was fantastic. But for the 5 Mark IV, I had to try and use some other random third-party brand that I had not heard of. And the issue that I had with that is that the touch sensitivity was kind of ruined, and I'd sometimes not get the response from the phone when I was touching it, especially when trying to swipe from the edges to go back using the gestures. So I had to take it off. So that's a problem for me at the minute, but it's not a deal breaker. But I'd like to see more accessories in future. I reckon that we would probably get more of those for the Mark V series, just because I think there's going to be a bigger upgrade. So I think more people will buy the phones. There'll be a bigger market for it. But at least they're not issues with the phones itself. Overall though, I'm having a very good time with the device. I love how compact it is and how much Sony's managed to stuff into that body. It's crazy. I have a lot more testing to do. And if there's anything that you want me to cover in particular, there's any questions that you have, please just leave a comment below and I will try and incorporate that into the video as best I can. But until then, folks, stay grounded and maybe check out some other content on the channel, and I will see you all soon.